Viewers, there is a vocal lobby within our borders that criticizes the present government for not standing up to China when it undercuts India economically, militarily, and of course diplomatically as it ties up with Pakistan and then pushes propaganda in various diplomatic fora. Propaganda that is, of course, anti-India. Last evening, Rahul Gandhi echoed the lobby's misgivings on the floor of Parliament on this account. But viewers, is the lobby right? That question is being prompted once again, just days after the Chinese tried to play cheap politics over Galwan. Yes, viewers, the Chinese called upon a military man to carry the Olympic Games torch. Now, he's no ordinary military man. This individual was injured during the Galwan Clash. Not only has he served in Galwan, but was beaten to within a few minutes of death by Indian Jawans. You will all remember the clash from 2 years ago, viewers. The underhand provocation elicited a stern response from India. New Delhi has announced a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympic Games. In this, India has joined a small group of countries led by America who have, for one reason or the other, done the same. The diplomatic boycott follows the decision to stop certain Chinese goods and services within our borders. This was a decision, if you remember, viewers, taken by India 2 years ago, right after the Galwan Clash. Not just this, viewers, an Australian news magazine has released a report that it has published after investigating the circumstances that not only led to the clash in Galwan, but what actually happened there over the last 1 year. This report shows that India's soldiers inflicted major scars upon the Chinese army. In fact, viewers, it bears out the now quite famous refrain by the Prime Minister that Indian soldiers marte marte mare. In other words, they gave it their all in order to inflict the maximum damage on the Chinese side. This report also tells us, viewers, that the Chinese have undercounted their deaths. In fact, their casualties, according to this report, are 9 times higher than what they have revealed. Now, viewers, think about it. Would a nation too weak to stand up to China ever contemplate incurring its wrath by fighting hard and inflicting a bloody nose that China has taken months to hide under its stinky armpit? Viewers, sending such a strong message by calling for a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics. Not once, viewers, but a boycott of another kind 2 years ago. Would a country that was shaking at its knees at the very thought of China hitting back contemplate and do such a thing? Would it hold press conferences calling out Chinese propaganda? Would it stand up to Chinese fakery in the United Nations? And would its military commanders routinely publicly warn Chinese against crossing the line? Would its Prime Minister, viewers, vow to avenge the death of every Indian in Galwan and Chinese expansionism. And would its soldiers, as I said, clobber the living daylights out of the Chinese? Now compare India's response over the last few years to the timid capitulation of Pakistan that has turned into a vassal state of China, or the prevarications of ASEAN nations that don't stand up to China's punishing, trade distorting, currency manipulations, or even Turkey that turns a blind eye to Chinese human rights violations because its friend Pakistan allies with China and doesn't want to upset this cozy relationship. Viewers, I want you to first listen to the Indian government's decision to join the United States and, as I said, a handful of other countries in declaring a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics in China. Listen to this.
Yes, we have seen the reports on this issue. It is indeed regrettable that the Chinese side has chosen to politicize an event like the Olympics. I wish to inform that our chargé d'affaires of the Embassy of India in Beijing will not be attending the opening or the closing ceremony of the Beijing 22 Winter Olympics.
Viewers, on the one hand, we've taken a leap of faith. We've joined a small band of nations that has decided to embarrass China. They're not going to take to it kindly. It's a hegemon, don't forget. It's a country with a very small ego, a very brittle ego. Before we open this up, I want to go across to Anthony Klan, investigative journalist and editor of the Klaxon, who joins us from Australia. It's pretty late there. Anthony, and thank you very much for talking to me live on Times Now, India's leading news channel. Anthony, first of all, you've been investigating this alleged Chinese cover-up. What have you found?
So what we've found is we've had a 12 months worth of investigations, and we've found a lot of quite a considerable amount of material which points to China vastly understating its casualties in the battle of June 15, 2020 in the Galwan Valley. We've got primary source data. We've spoken to people on the ground. Basically, after the clash, India came out and said 20 of our soldiers had been killed, but China didn't. China actually said nothing at all for 8 months. It wouldn't confirm anything at all, and it said that was its policy. However, in February of last year, now this is 8 months after the battle, it came out and said 4 of its soldiers had been killed, and it posthumously awarded these 4 soldiers with bravery medals. What we've subsequently established, and at the time it was considered not particularly believable. How is this the case? What we've managed to establish is quite a bit of detail surrounding the battle and what happened on that evening, the particulars leading up to it, and the spark that set it off, as well as that around 38 Chinese soldiers were killed that evening. We're told on very good evidence. Many of them falling into the freezing Galwan River and being swept away, drowning or otherwise dying of hypothermia as they sought to leave the initial conflict site with Indian soldiers. So basically, it shows, or very, very strongly suggests, that there was the toll was vastly higher than that which China has claimed.
Anthony Klan, what's this very good evidence that you refer to?
Yeah, so we've got a group of social media experts, analysts have been examining information from the time, from witness accounts on the ground. In particular, we've got our hands on documents that were on Chinese websites, statements in Chinese internet that have been very quickly removed by the Chinese government. Now, they set out very clear examples of, or very clear statements of what's happened, in particular, this issue of soldiers being killed as they've been washed down or attempted to cross the river. There are a couple of points. So the fact that this material has been very quickly removed, that their eyewitness accounts, gives it very strong weighting. But we've also come by a considerable, a main focus of China has been to shut down any discussion on casualties in this event. And so it's actually really closely focused on shutting down any debate. For example, on February 19th of last year, of 2020, China came out and said 4 soldiers had died and they'd been awarded medals. Now, the very next day, the Chinese government came out and said a very senior reporter had lost his job. A Chinese reporter had lost his job. Now, he was supposedly for betraying country, etc. But all he had done was say, look, the 4 deaths is not true. It's a lot more than that. But the government thought this was such a big problem that it cost him his job, and other reports show that he was in fact arrested and was interrogated and taken away. So the government put that out the next day. So he immediately said that's not true, and they've put him away, and they've come out and told the public that this is not to be spoken about. So it's a very highly orchestrated attempt, or successful attempt in a lot of ways, to prevent this information from coming out. Now, many of the families of those killed are understood to be very frustrated because they've got loved ones who have given their lives for the country, and they're being sort of looked over or just ignored, or treated as if they don't exist by China. So there's this tension. Now, this tension, there's one very strong line of thought that this tension is why China came out 8 months after the attacks and said 4 soldiers had died, is attempt to take some steam out of the problem. But as we've seen now, it's only sort of heating up for China, given that more and more information is coming out.
Obviously, the reportage is based, you're saying, on telltale signs on the Chinese internal social media engine called Weibo. Now, Anthony Klan, there are striking similarities between this modus operandi that the Chinese followed in also covering up, of course, the Wuhan virus that escaped out of their country and brought down, millions around the world. The same sort of cover-up by punishing individuals who dared to go on the social media and Chinese internal social media, of course, which is close to the outside world, and contest Chinese claims.
Yes, well, this is a very clear example of China going out of its way to make examples of people so other people don't do the same thing, and often being very strong attack or action against people that do speak out, and ensuring others don't. But when you have such emotional events such as the Galwan Clash, and many people's lives have been lost, and it's such an important issue, it becomes more and more difficult for China to shut this down. And of course, even though these documents had been removed from the internet, we managed to obtain copies or shots from before they were taken down, which has been of tremendous help in piecing together what's happened.
Stay on with me. Let me bring in Ajay Shukla, who's strategic affairs expert. Ajay Shukla, I don't know if you've seen this report. It's been very widely quoted all across Indian media. What do you make of it?
Well, it always struck me as completely unlikely that the Chinese would get the better of India in a clash like this so conclusively, as had been reported earlier, with China acknowledging just 4 casualties. I know the fighting qualities of an Indian soldier. I know that when they clash in a group, it would have been approximately equal or in favor of the Indian side. So to that extent, I'm glad the report is coming out. I'm glad the numbers from the Chinese side are being made public, but I'm not entirely surprised.
Let me ask you, what makes a military Mr. Shukla, stand up this firmly against an adversary that is allegedly far superior to them? Is it clarity of command? Is it the freedom that the commanders give to defend Indian soil and Indian interests?
There's all of that, Rahul, but there's also a certain sort of conviction in what is being done, because at the end of the day, a military, even though it prevails by the power of arms and the power of its gun, it is also very important for the military to be convinced that it's following a moral path. It gets strength from that adherence to morality, and it gives it the wherewithal to go on even in the face of danger. So this is not the first time that India has stood up to China. I would remind you about 1959, when the Dalai Lama and a whole bunch of Tibetan refugees crossed into India. India was the only country in the world that actually took them on, and to this date has a Tibetan government in exile. India was the country that refused to go and attend the Belt and Road meeting in Beijing, when even the United States felt prevailed upon to go over there. And now there's this. So I think that there's a certain morality in the Indian position that gives the soldiers strength.
Well, I'm glad you should have said this, because that comes really from also the resolve that has been shown by the political leadership. No skirmish is ever, viewers, and this was a very serious one, manifests itself without the clarity that comes straight from the leadership. That, look, you have a free hand, go out there, punish those who are trying to provoke you or who are trying to undermine you. And this is very, very important. Anthony Klan and Ajay Shukla, thank you for joining us. I want to now open this up to the political aspects and implications of this particular conversation. Let me now bring in Dr. Ranganathan. Dr. Ranganathan, before I get the two politicians in, yesterday I heard something that rankled. And I didn't want to do the debate yesterday because I really wanted to deep dive into the facts myself. Yesterday, the Congress Party Supremo, or the acting Supremo, or the next Supremo, or what have you, came out in Parliament and said in clear terms that Chinese have clarity of vision and purpose. Don't underestimate it. On the basis of the great gallantry that is today coming forth from Anthony Klan's investigative journalism and the Klaxon, which is obviously a magazine there, do you believe that India underestimates China, doesn't have the resolve to stand up to China, has allowed the Chinese a free run, so much so that it has even isolated us?
No, good evening, Rahul, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. Look, looking at the Galwan terrain, many might ask, why protect every inch of it with all your might? Nothing grows on it. Well, let me tell you now what grows on it, Rahul, our resolve. And I have to say this because you mentioned your namesake, Rahul Gandhi. Rahul, I am disgusted by how our own people were peddling Chinese propaganda for close to 4 years now. And today's revelation from the Australian newspaper or magazine has given them a bloody nose. It is now beyond doubt that the Chinese weren't expecting India to react the way that we did. That June 15th night in 2020, they weren't expecting the bravery of our soldiers fighting off with bare hands. Bare hands, they were fighting weapons made out of barbed wire, even as they fell into their deaths in that freezing Galwan below. They weren't expecting suffering more than 40 casualties, as is what the proof has been provided today. But I want to make a larger point, and here, I hope people have learned their lesson. It concerns all those who never lose an opportunity to raise an alarm at every opportunity their master, i.e. China, provides them with. And I'm not talking of communists here, Rahul. I'm talking of people from the Congress party. And it is important because these very same people thought nothing of Chinese transgressions before 2014 during Congress rule. Let me remind them what they said. In fact, one of them is your panelist right now. I quote, The India-China border is not yet defined, and so when the Chinese make incursions, it only means that they haven't entered our territory, unquote. Now you know, China occupied 640 square kilometers of eastern Ladakh during the UPA, a fact reiterated by UPA's own foreign secretary. You know, China managed to make nearly 600 incursions into the Indian side between 2010 and 2013. You know, on July 12, 2013, the Chinese entered 28 kilometers deep into our territory at Dapsang. You know, on June 17, 2013, the Chinese transgressed deep into Chumar, an incursion the UPA did not disclose for 3 weeks for fear of public anger, forcing cancellation of the defense minister visit to China. Now, when you quote these facts, what is the response of these muppets? Oh, this is whataboutery, they say. Well, the truth is that they are acutely embarrassed by their selectivity. Embarrassed that they were silent when China was bullying us during the UPA. They want to give the impression that China is transgressing only post-2014. I would have respected them had they raised their voices then, as they are doing now, Rahul.
Well, now they're raising their voices to question the Indian Army's valor. And let me point out some statements. In June 2020, Congress leader Hussain Dalwai said, only our Jawans died, none on the Chinese side. So what he said, viewers, it's on record. Zakir Hussain, former Congress councillor, he remains a congressman, says China made Indian soldiers flee the battlefield. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, June 2020, not an insignificant leader, viewers, active, LOP. He said Indian arsenals are not meant for hatching eggs, as if we are not doing anything to punish the Chinese with our capacity. Kapil Madan, your leader says, almost suggesting that the government has sold India out in the face of Chinese provocations. You know what he said in Parliament yesterday. You know what your other colleagues have been saying. Should they apologize? Should they stop politicizing the valor of our forces who are standing tall? You have candidates in the Punjab election who said all we did in Balakot was to kill a couple of crows. You have a candidate, sir. You're talking about bringing China and Pakistan together. You have a candidate, sir, from the state you come from, who hugged the Pakistani general, the chief, who promotes terror on our side of the border. What gives you the right, sir? What gives you the right to talk about and question and doubt army valor? I'm asking you a simple question.
Yeah. So let me begin this by acknowledging and saying on record that I am really proud to see this Australian report where they say that approximately 14 Chinese soldiers were killed by our armed forces. At the same time, let me also bring this point on record that it took an Australian investigative journalist to publish this report after almost 1.5 years. Now, why is the government of India is not coming forward, is not coming clean? Had this been a report that would have come from, some official spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense or any other relevant government organization, it would have been more credible. It would have been more. It would basically make the government stance clear.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Madan? Do you research before you come to Times Now? I'm just asking you a simple question.
I'm sorry?
आप पढ़ के आते हैं थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ लिख के आते हैं before you step on to Times Now and debate, sir?
Yeah, of course.
आप करते हैं तो आपने बोला कि India has never spoken about this. Now let me correct you. No, listen to me now, please.
Just a minute. No, let me.
Lieutenant General Narsimhan, listen to me. Listen to me.
Okay.
I'm talking about officials. Since you said we have never come out with these figures, it's taken an Australian report sitting some million miles away to put the facts. The government has. Now let me tell you, Lieutenant General Narsimhan, NSA board, National Security Advisor board said 15 to 17 Chinese killed, including 3 officers.
And what is the report?
1 second.
What is the report?
1 second. Let me finish. I allowed you, sir. Let me finish. Let me put the facts out for my viewers. I don't want my viewers to go away feeling cheated twice in 2 days. I told you I didn't do this. I didn't attempt this debate last night because I wanted to come away with facts. Now, Lieutenant General, please, sir, please. Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi, GOC Northern Command. After clash, our ops were observing closely. Counted a lot of stretchers, more than 60. Can't say if they were fatal or non-fatal. Viewers, these two individuals are serving the Indian state. One, an army commander. The other, an official of the NSA board. It wasn't the political leadership that came out and gave these sound bites, just like when we struck across the LOC in Uri. Viewers, it was the army commander who came out and gave us the details. That's what countries with a system do. They don't sit and brag about army valor from political pulpits. They let the army speak for themselves. We're not a banana republic, viewers, as much as someone might want to turn us into or describe us as. The question that needs to be asked, what prevents the Congress from recognizing this? What makes repeatedly congressmen come out and say, the China killed our soldiers, took our land? Rahul Gandhi, Congress MP, June 2020. Only our Jawans died, none on the Chinese side. Hussain Dalwai, Congress leader, June 2020. Even though the army has come out and set the record straight, I want Gaurav Bhatia to respond to Mr. Madan, who's clearly not come after having done his research. Mr. Bhatia.
Well, I think your own rebuttal basically exposed
Rahul,
the numbers, the different in number that you are saying. In fact, you first mentioned that the first report suggested, I forgot the name of the army officer that
naturally you would forget, sir. For the army is inconsequential, and the people who have served this country are not to be forgotten. Are to be forgotten. Okay, Mr. Bhatia, the charge still stands, yes. Says Kapil Madan. You have no clue. It's taken an Australian to count the dead on the Chinese side. Respond.
Rahul, I would like to very humbly state that there should be no politics when it comes to China or Pakistan. But the sad state of affairs, especially in the opposition camp, has been that they have been indulging in very cheap and petty and irresponsible politics. And leave alone the statement of Hussain Dalwai. Let's, recollect the statement of Rahul Gandhi. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji took all political parties into confidence on the Galwan Valley issue, there was an all-party meeting. After that, the response of Rahul Gandhi was that Modi, surrender Modi. As if the Prime Minister could not give a free hand to the brave Indian Army. And I must very proudly say that even in the past, we have debated on Times Now and on other channels also, how there have been reports very clearly, and Indian Army has also spoken on it, and other international agencies also showed that the casualties on the other side were more. And 20 of our brave Indian soldiers who made the supreme sacrifice, their valor was questioned by them. What has changed? I'll tell you. I think the most important thing is that the current political dispensation, the ruling party under Narendra Modi ji, has given a free hand to the Indian Army. And ours is the bravest army which is battle ready. The Chinese army has not fought a battle in the last 5 decades. Let us not forget that.
Okay. But
it really puts us to shame that Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, you remember the tweet when he said, and he responded, that the Indian army will give a befitting response. Who pressurized him, Rahul, to delete that tweet? That tweet was deleted because the Congress party was busy attacking the Indian army and the government. They don't care about national interest. They are very irresponsible when it comes to the issues of national security.
Well, viewers, all I need to say here is that the facts are speaking for themselves. Yes, sir, Dr. Ranganathan is raising his hand and pointing to a telephone. What is this?
Yes, Rahul, very briefly, it is very rare for Kapil, my good friend, to make an error, but today, unfortunately, I think he has. When he talked about, lamenting the fact that Australians have come up with this word, but Indians haven't or others haven't, let me remind him, one, that the Russian ITAS agency clearly specified 45 Chinese had died in February of 2021. And in 2020 of June itself, when the clashes happened, here is an Indian report quoted by ANI, saying that according to Indian Army and intelligence reports, 43 casualties have been on the Chinese side. I'm sorry, there is an ad of Chappal. Maybe there is a metaphorical message here for my good friend Kapil Madan. But the fact is, Kapil, you've been found wanting today. The truth is that Indians have always reported that more than 40 Chinese died and more than 20 of our brave Jawans died. So please get your facts right.
And let me also tell you, viewers, that the Klaxon, the investigative journalist and editor of the Klaxon, Anthony Klan, has not said that that is a top-end figure. He said at least.
Yes.
At least 9 times underreported. The United States Intel report that was submitted to the Indian government said 35 casualties on the Chinese side. That seemed to have been, if one were to now correlate the numbers coming out of the Klaxon, the most accurate. What is sad is today that the Congress spokesperson is saying that he's very proud of this report and he feels proud to be an Indian, but he's not ashamed of his own colleagues who actually said there were 0 deaths. I was hoping that he would say, yeah, well, maybe we jumped the gun. But it's okay. I don't expect...
Galwan mein tiranga hi acha lagta hai. And
well,
the
I'll leave it at this.
had to post a picture.
Viewers, I'll leave it at this. You've heard the editor himself. You've heard Ajay Shukla, who's been a skeptic, today step up to the plate and say, Anthony Klan, congratulations. He didn't say whether the report was Australian or whether, it was Indian or it was rooted through here or there. He just said, I'm not surprised at all because the Indian army stands tall. And this coming from Ajay Shukla, who has not been a fan of the government's policies and is supposedly an advisor to Rahul Gandhi, shows that Rahul Gandhi is the one who's isolated today, not India. I'll leave it at that. I'll take a short break. Come right back.